You're not welcome here, pal. The cuff snapped shut around Jake Callahan's wrist, the cold metal biting into his skin. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared at the gravestone in front of him, calm as the mist curling through Fairview Cemetery. The crowd murmured, their whispers sharp with judgment. "Stolen valor," one sneered. "Look at him, no uniform," another hissed. To them, he was just a guy in a worn leather jacket, a nobody daring to place a military coin on a hero's grave. They didn't know the man they'd cuffed was a former tomb guard, one of the elite who'd walked the silent watch at Arlington. They didn't know he'd carried a promise through a decade of grief, or that the only person who could vouch for him, a retired colonel with steel in her spine, was already on her way, ready to turn their accusations to ash. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The Ohio morning was heavy, the kind that pressed against your chest like a promise you couldn't keep. At Fairview Military Cemetery, a small patch of sacred ground in a quiet town, mist clung to the gravestones like a shroud. The air was sharp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Jacob Callahan, 38, walked the familiar path, his combat boots crunching softly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by years and loss. His old leather jacket hung loose, jeans faded, and a small tomb guard badge glinted faintly on his collar, unnoticed by most. In his hands, he carried a modest bouquet of white daisies and a worn challenge coin, its edges smoothed by years of touch. The coin bore the insignia of a unit long gone, a relic of promises made in the desert. Jake's eyes shadowed under a knit cap fixed on a single headstone. Thomas T.J. Jenkins, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, 1984 to 2009. Jake stopped, his breath visible in the cold. He knelt, the grass soaking his knees, and set the daisies against the stone. His fingers traced TJ's name, carved deep into the marble. "Still here, brother," he whispered, voice low, almost swallowed by the wind. He placed the coin beside the flowers, a ritual he'd kept every year since the war ended. It wasn't for show, it was for TJ, for the nights they'd shared under a merciless sky, for the laughter that had kept them sane. The cemetery was quiet, but not empty. A mother with a young boy stood near a grave, her face tight with grief. An older man in a veteran's cap leaned on a cane, watching from a distance. A couple murmured by another stone, their voices soft but curious. Their eyes flicked to Jake, lingering on his civilian clothes, the coin, the lack of medals or uniform. Whispers stirred. "Who's that guy? No way he's a vet, dressed like that. Probably here for attention." Jake didn't hear them. His mind was elsewhere. Pulled back to a rock. 2009. The sun burned, dust coating everything. He and TJ sat on crates outside their tent, sharing a lukewarm bottle of water. TJ, wiry and quick, tossed the challenge coin in the air, catching it with a grin. "If I don't make it, Jake, you keep this. Put it on my grave. Make it official." Jake had laughed, shaking his head. "You're not going anywhere, TJ. Who'd keep me from losing it out here?" TJ's eyes sparkled, his laugh cutting through the heat. "You're Echo, man. Cool under fire. I'm the one who needs watching." They were brothers, not by blood, but by choice. Jake wasn't a grunt like TJ. He handled logistics, kept the unit moving, made sure supplies got where they needed to go. But in the chaos of war, titles didn't matter. They'd been through too much. Ambushes, long nights, the kind of fear that settled in your bones. TJ was the spark, the one who could make a bad day bearable with a joke. Jake was the anchor, steady when everything else fell apart. That coin, handed over with a grin, was a pact, a promise Jake hadn't known he'd had to keep. Back in the present, Jake stood, giving the headstone a slow salute. His hand trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of memory. The crowd's whispers grew louder, their stares harder. The mother's son, maybe 7, tugged her sleeve. "Why is he saluting, Mom? Is he a soldier?" She hesitated, unsure. I don't know, sweetie. Let's just watch. Across the cemetery, Ryan Mitchell, 25, patrolled with a stiff stride, his security guard uniform crisp, his radio crackling faintly. 3 weeks ago, he'd screwed up. A man in a leather jacket, not unlike Take's, had shown up at Fairview claiming to be a vet. He'd been drunk, throwing bottles at the graves, shouting nonsense about his service. Ryan had hesitated, unsure how to handle it, and the guy slipped away before police arrived. His boss had torn into him, and the embarrassment still stung. Now, seeing Jake, same jacket, same boots, placing a military coin, Ryan's gut twisted when a woman from the crowd approached Jake, pointing at him and muttering about stolen valor. Ryan's resolve hardened. Not again. "Sir," Ryan called, striding over, his voice sharp enough to cut through the mist. "I need to see some ID." Jake turned slowly, his face calm but guarded. "I'm just visiting a friend." Ryan's hand rested on his cuffs, his eyes on the coin. "That's a military coin. Claiming to be a vet?" Jake's eyes flicked to the headstone, then back. "I'm here for him," he said, voice steady. The crowd edged closer, their murmurs growing. "He's faking it," one man said, arms crossed. "No real vet looks like that," another added. The mother held her son tighter, his eyes wide. "Why is he in trouble, Mom?" he asked again. She shushed him, her face uncertain. Ryan's jaw tightened. "We had a guy like you a few weeks ago. Leather jacket, boots, acting like he owned the place, threw bottles at the graves, disrespected every stone here. I'm not letting that happen again. ID now." Jake's eyes darkened, but his voice stayed even. "I'm not that guy." Ryan unclipped his cuffs, his hands steady despite the adrenaline. "Hands behind your back, now." Jake didn't move, his gaze fixed on TJ's grave. The daisies trembled in the breeze, the coin glinting faintly. The crowd held its breath as Ryan stepped forward, cuffs clicking shut around Jake's wrist. The boy gasped, pulling at his mother's hand. "He didn't do anything," he whispered. The older veteran shifted, his cane tapping softly.